Okay, great. Thank you very much, Glenn, and thank you for inviting me. Solidarity from me and along with BC to your AGM. Um, I'm going to be really talking from my sort of memory, everything what went on. So first of all, let me give a bit of background about myself and how I got involved in Labour Party politics. I was born in Bangladesh, and my parents had gone through two lots of migrations. This is a debate we've been having in our family circus because they're spread all around the world. My mother died 4 years ago in the States, so we were talking about how one ended up here and States and elsewhere. So first, the partition of 47, which we touched upon a little bit. My parents lived in India and they had to choose East Bengal in Pakistan. They were living in West Bengal, Calcutta. They saw through the um, horrible massacres and everything, but then they were forced to move to East Bengal. And then, although they believed in one India, they did not believe in the division of India on grounds of religion, because Hindus and Muslims lived together in the same neighborhood. They were brought up that way. And second migration was in 1971 during the Pakistan, the crackdown, military crackdown in Bangladesh. And we were living in the West, and that's how I ended up in Britain, because my father just said, you better leave. That was in August 71. I traveled all the way by road, in fact, from Peshawar to London, stopping over all the way with my brother. So we always, I come from a background where my father, particularly and family, faced discrimination because they were Bengalis by the, non-Bengalis who dominated the government civil service. So the issue about race and racism and discrimination was always the topic. So when I came to Britain and got involved, I was very much involved in sort of challenging racism, fighting against discrimination. So my early causes involvement was on the Palestine cause, Chile's solidarity when coups happened in Africa and Latin America and elsewhere. The Anti-Nazi League was my first sort of involvement in terms of anti-racist strategy. So in 1974, when there was a general election going on, I just took my A-levels and my uncle encouraged me to join the Labour Party, saying, well, I thought the Labour Party was the party to join, which sort of was close enough to my in terms of ideals. But when I joined, there was hardly anybody of my color or background in the party. There were just a handful. So they were very sort of keen that I got involved. And within 3-4 years, they wanted me to stand for the GC and elsewhere, and then council seat in 1982. I got elected. I was one of the first 4 black councillors elected in 1982. But then when you appeared at GC meetings, that's where there were only 3 or 4 people. I remember my good comrade Milton Babula saying to me, oh, I'm glad you're the second delegate. We are now 2 of us on the GC to take on issues on racism and racism. So in 1983, the first movement started to have a black section movement, and group of mostly Afro-Caribbean Labour Party members met in Birmingham, and it was led by Bernie Grant and Paul Boateng and 1 or 2 others, that we needed a self-organization for black people within the party, because the party derived its votes in terms of MPs in certain inner city areas, mostly from the black communities. And yet, representation-wise, there weren't enough councillors or MPs. So it started really from representation angle. So in 1984, we had the first black section conference. The party said it was illegal and we were threatened with expulsion, but we carried on meeting, We then set about forming local branches. I took the lead in setting up the Islington North Black section in 1984 and got the recognition, support, even though the National Party nationally didn't accept it. And then we said we would take it on outside in the trade unions and wherever we went. So it was about representation. And from 1985, the party, Islington North CLP, backed by Jeremy Corbyn, always backed the black section motion, which went to the party conference. We were one of the few constituencies which we always, So I was the first delegate from Islington North to be the delegate to party conference in Bournemouth, to argue the case for a black section. And in those days, there were very, very few black delegates that got selected, from constituencies. So we used to try and pack in the visitors gallery with extra tickets. In those days, there weren't the digital passes kind of thing. So whenever the black section debate was going to be defeated, we used to bring in other visitors. We always stayed in the same hotel so we can lobby, caucus, decide strategies, who would speak one. So when I was the delegate in 1985, I managed to get in on the economic policy debate, which was led by John Smith, and argued the case for a black section in the party. So I basically said at the end of my speech, because I was suddenly called in, didn't know what to say, that his report should be referred back to the NEC so that black sections should be consulted, black members of the party should be consulted. In fact, there was a vote taken in the end, of course, it was lost heavily. He did acknowledge in his thing about the participation of black members. So from 1985 onwards till 1993, we always sent a delegate, and it was 93 when John Smith was leader, a Black Socialist Society was recognized. But then, you see, what happened, we had the 4 black MPs elected in 1995, and that was due to the black section movement. They played a very important, heavy part in having 4 black MPs elected. And we also saw an increase in more black councillors being elected. Now, let me come to the issue about the definition. The word black was adopted as the political definition. It meant people of race or ethnicity who felt discrimination in the party and, who wanted to be inclusive, and that's how it was chosen. And for something that Bernie Grant was very passionate about. So I remember I used to go around with him at French meetings, and he was quite upfront about that. We must be called black. Do not call anybody any that. That is the political definition. And I remember going to one French meeting where he challenged the chair, why haven't you got a black speaker on the panel? And the chair got very embarrassed, saying, oh, we couldn't find, we were trying to find. He said, well, there's myself, there's Talal, you could have chosen one of us to be the speaker, issues like that. Then in the trade union movement, I took the lead in my union. At that time, it was ASTMS and then MSF. And when I turned up at a regional committee meeting, handing out letters, arguing them to support the cause of Black Social Society in the party black section, I got a threatening letter from the Assistant General Secretary then, because I described myself as the trade union coordinator, ASTM's trade union coordinator for black section, from Baroness Muriel Turner now, threatening me with expulsion, saying, how dare you use this title? This title doesn't exist. And will you stop refraining calling yourself as ASTM's black section coordinator? So that was a bit of the history side of thing. And then 1993, we formally got recognized. And then what happened was we set up local societies in every constituency. We set up branches, we had representation. But then what happened was, we of course got more MPs also being selected, more councillors being selected, but there was a change in attitude and certain people hijacked, and then they changed it to call it BME labor, and people started ignoring what the black secretary, and that's when the level of involvement got reduced a bit and we got a bit inactive, we started bidding, but that was the beginning of the rise of, a need for separate sections, separate, for black members, because we contributed. Now, if you remember the issue of reparations, Bernie Grant was the first one to raise it, MP, after he became MP. And the right-wing tabloid simply started having a go at him, misquoted him, that he had called for repatriation. Would Bernie ever argue the case for it? Remember the Sun and others saying Bernie has asked for people who've come from the Caribbean to be repatriated back and resettled there. Remember, that was how the right-wing press used to lobby. But the reparation was first raised by Bernie, and then subsequently, speakers from India and others started raising. Shashi Tharoor raised it 4 years ago, that India should also claim reparations back for what Britain did in India and the legacy that's left behind. So in terms of under Labour government, yes, Labour government was responsible for the partition of India and all the havoc that's been created there, and it still continues unresolved issues. But in terms of where we are today, of course, BC has touched upon it. The Black Lives Matter has now overtaken, and our response from the party has been absolutely pathetic. And also on the coronavirus issue, health issues, it's mostly BME, black, doctors and patients who have been affected more all across. When you look at it in areas where there's a large black population, they are the ones who've suffered. And yet, this is something that we haven't not taken so seriously. And yes, okay, the new leader has set up a working party with Angela Rayner, and we don't know where that will lead to. But I know under Jeremy Corbyn, one of the first things he did was under the democracy review was to look at the structure and accountability of the BME Labour. And some of the recommendations that have been put in there were some of the things that some of us who were Black section activists had argued for, which was to have a separate Black section society with its own delegates and whatever. We were not very happy that the term BME Labour still is being used, because BC and I are on one on this. We feel we should go back to when it was originally started, which is the Black Socialist Society. So we should have our own society with our own officer and be allowed to elect delegates. And I don't see why we should even pay subscriptions for it. We are already paying subscription as party members, as to why you have to join to become. There's still a lot of work to be done. Okay, the number of MPs have no doubt increased. But it's still a huge a struggle to get in, and certainly there should be a lot more MPs, a lot more councillors, but we are nowhere near there. So there's still a lot of hard work, struggle to do, and the fight goes on, basically.